Like anything that has bearings that's like rotating on your bike, bottom bracket, hubs, and also like our headset we're gonna have to take a look at here. And so we want to grease down in here. Isn't that weird? So like this is the stuff that you can run into with Walmart bikes, is there's just like these mysterious parts on them that barely make sense. I was a little bit scared, to be honest. All right, so that was a mess. So then we've got this guy right here that doesn't have any grease in it either. And we are just gonna give this thing all of the grease that it could ever possibly want and require. There's all the bearings, see right here, that we want to grease up. It does seem like, let's see here. It does seem like there's some grease in there. When I'm looking up in there, there's some grease up in the upper race. However, there's is this a metal shaving in there? Yes, there's a metal shaving in there. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. We're just out in the garage and we got a new bike out here. We're just hanging out with a new bike. Picked this thing up the other day at Walmart. Now, hang on a moment. So yeah, what we usually have to do with these Walmart bikes is you gotta overhaul the bottom bracket, and then if the wheels have those like loose bearing cup and cone style hubs in them, then I'm going to use the cone wrenches to open the hubs up of the wheels where the bearings are on each side of the hub. And then if they're loose ball bearings, I'm just going to fill those suckers up with some grease. Another thing is like the headset. Basically, like everything that has bearings that you might want to grease up. Right, so chances are these headsets are just kind of like the headset bearings on it. There's one on the top and then one on the bottom. Chances are those are just kind of the loosey-goosey bearings where you can just, it's just like kind of like caged bearings, caged ball bearings, and then you can just pump a bunch of grease in there. So yeah, that's basically it, guys. So I think what I'm going to start with is getting the wheels off of this bike. I've got Park Tool SCW15 and SCW17, my cone wrenches here. And so what I'm going to do here is we're going to take the 15 and hold this guy, and then we're going to take the 17 and loosen this guy so that we can see what's going on in here. Oh, okay, there we got it. Alright guys, GoPro is failing me, and I'm really hoping that when I just adjusted this cup and cone on this front wheel, that it recorded it. Alright, hey guys, what's up? I'm just jumping in here in the editing room a little bit because my GoPro totally failed me when I was filming this, and like I serviced this whole hub on the front wheel, but the GoPro like turned off right when I started doing it. So I'm gonna help you out. In this video I show how to open the loosen up use the cone wrenches to loosen up the lock nuts on the axle to get into the hub, but I never actually get a good view down inside of the hub to the bearings and stuff. And on the rear wheel, there was this dust cap that was kind of in the way, and those things they're kind of annoying to get out of the way. And you can sometimes just pump a bunch of grease down into the hub without taking the whole thing apart. And so one thing that can happen is that these bearings are just loose in there, right? So you want to keep the wheel straight up and vertical, and then I kind of loosen up the hub on one side and get some grease in on that side, and then kind of push the axle back this way, and then get some grease in over on the opposite side, and then tighten the nuts back onto the hub. But basically, if you don't want all the bearings to fall out all over onto the floor. That's the main thing, is that if you're not if there's no grease inside of the races, which there might not be, then like if you're messing around with the wheel and you have the hub all loose, like the bearings are just all loose inside of it, and they can just come falling out all over the floor. And you definitely need a cone wrench for this, or else you would have to take the brake rotor off, because the brake rotor bolts would be in the way, and you're not going to be able to fit like a normal, like one of these down there. Like, it's just not going to fit because the brake rotor bolts are in the way. So it does make sense to have like an actual Park Tool cone wrench. This is one of those things where like it's just so, it's the skinniness of the cone wrench that's important. So here, like, you don't want to hurt, this is kind of dangerous because we're doing this over on the brake rotor side, so you don't want to slice your fingers on the rotor as you're opening this thing. So I'm just gonna, okay. So I loosened the nuts up against each other. So this one, let's see here. So we gotta, this one should be able to come off of here. Man, that was really tight. So this is why you have to look at this stuff. Cause like this wheel, if I would have rolled this wheel, man, I was riding this wheel. Like I rolled this thing a few times. Okay, so that was way too tight. So now like this thing is loose, and it's too loose, right? Because I loosened it up, and so the nuts aren't like threading against each other at all. But now, like, what is going on here? Why doesn't this thing? Oh, I think as I was loosening them, I must have slightly tightened that one on the inside. So I'm gonna take the 17 over on the other side, and then I've got the 15 right here, and I'm gonna loosen this one over here a little bit. There we go. Yeah, that was too tight. Like that inner one, like I already showed you, like the inner one, that's what adjusts the compression against the bearings inside the hub, right? This inner nut. But then this outer one that I'm unscrewing, that is what tightens up against the inner one to keep it in the place that you want, right? So we're gonna adjust this bearing just like I did with the other one. And it seems like they did grease these, like, so what you would do here, does this thing have, it looks like it has another seal or something right here. So there's another seal or something right here that I think you'd have to take off of there to grease in there. But I can see the grease here. So I don't know that I'm gonna take this dust seal out of there. I think I'm just gonna, I don't think I need to add any grease because it seems like there already is grease. It's just a matter, they're getting better with the grease. Like when you bought these Walmart bikes previously, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, or even just a few years ago, really, sometimes like they would assemble them and they weren't greased, and it was just like, why would you even put a bike together without grease? But it seems like they're getting better about the assembly, like they're kind of working on it. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tighten the inner one. So I'm going to get the 17 on the opposite side, on that lock nut on the opposite side, and I got the 15 on this side, and I'm going to tighten this until it's like, well, like, it's like, so here is where it's tight, where there's like, I'm kind of like torquing down and I can feel the compression that's happening. But it feels a bit grindy. Actually, probably feels like good, like right there. Like it's, okay, so then when I have it adjusted nicely, we're gonna put the 15 on the inside and then just hold that inner lock nut steady without, let's see here. Just want to kind of spin it, make sure that it feels like it's spinning smoothly, and then pull it and make sure there's no, like, the axle can't go back and forth this way. Okay, so then we'll take the 15 on the inside and then just hold that steady, hold it still, and then we're taking the 17 on the outside, and this is the one that we're going to tighten towards that inner one. So you can see it's tightening, I'm holding the inner one steady, and we're tightening this outer one towards the inner one and then holding the inner one in place there. All right, so then it's getting they're getting torqued against each other really nice now. Like Nice and good. All right, so that should be good. And then we'll give it, oh, there we go. See how much smoother that is spinning there, boys? And then so I'm pulling on it and like, it's a quick release. So there's like, as you fasten on the quick release, like it adds just a slight amount of compression. So I've just like, there's just like one atom of wiggling that's happening. There's just like a slight amount, like it's not really like loose at all, but like it's just the inner nut is just gently pressed up against those bearings so it doesn't feel like it's grinding, but at the same time like it doesn't feel like it's all loosey goosey, right? And so that should be good for this wheel. Didn't really need to add the grease. Like if it doesn't look like it's greased, like I can just see grease right there, right? But if it doesn't look like it's greased right here and it's not obvious, like you would want to get the inner kind of like rubber thing out of the way, and it would be like the same thing, right? You would loosen these nuts up until you can kind of like pull this out a little bit and then squirt some grease in there and then tighten everything back together. You put grease into each side, right? Like you squirt grease over here, and then you can shift the axle like this, put grease on the other side, and tighten everything back together once you've greased it up. And make sure that when you're tightening these guys, like you got to make sure that it can spin smoothly in there, because that inner nut adjusts like the compression on your bearings and how the whole like wheel is going to spin. And there's probably like I don't know. There's probably was it like 18 bearings, or like I don't know. There's probably a number of like 1/4 inch ball bearings inside of there. But so now that this is spinning smoothly, you actually can't tell, like if you just hop on the bike from Walmart and start riding it, like these things can be kind of tight and you won't even tell. But like once you adjust these things, and I'm actually going to tighten it on there better, like I'm going to keep tightening these nuts against each other really good here, because you want these tightened against each other pretty good so that they don't, if they start to come loose, then your wheel starts to feel funny and you have to like take it all apart and like do it again. What is going on here? Why can't I get this onto these flats back there sometimes? There we go. All right, so I'm gonna tighten this a little bit more, just holding the inner one steady and just tightening the outer one. Just make sure that it's, yeah, I got that on there good, bud. All right. So I think we can get this rear, wheel back on the bike. I'm just kind of looking at the dropouts at how all of my motor stuff is going to fit on there. That should be interesting. All right, guys. So one thing that I've noticed now that I think I slightly loosened this thing up, and then when I slightly loosened it up, now the hub is like, I think the hub is like slightly different. And now I have this, it seems like this brake caliper back here is like slightly rubbing now. And so now the rear brake caliper is out of adjustment now that I like adjusted this rear hub. And I don't know if the quick release lever was like, I mean, I got the quick release lever on there how I want it. So I'm not exactly sure what happened here, but we can just, I'm just going to adjust the brake. Like, sometimes when you adjust one thing, then like something else comes out of adjustment, like especially with your wheels, like in the hub and the spacing of your hub, like funny things can happen when you change that kind of stuff. So what is it here, like a 5 on the, I'm gonna loosen up these. So there's like 2 mounting bolts on the brake caliper that once you, like those are what hold the brake caliper like on to like the post mount or whatever. So I'm just gonna loosen them just slightly. Not gonna take them all the way off. So then once you loosen them to a certain point, you should be able to like wiggle the brake caliper like left and right a little bit. If they're new, since they're new brake pads, like it might not wiggle that much, or like I think I gotta loosen this up a little bit more on here. Okay, so now let's see. So can this, yeah, so now my caliper can move around here. See that? So I don't need it that loose. Let's see. Can we get that a little bit tighter again? You just want to get it to the point where it can kind of wiggle around and like get centered on your brake. Okay, so I'm just gonna hold the brake lever so that it's squeezing on so that the caliper is squeezing the pads up against the disc. But on some of these bikes, like you can squeeze the brakes really hard and they'll actually bend the brake disc. So like I'm just hitting the brake until the pads are pressing up against the disc, and then I'm not like squeezing it any harder. And then I'm gonna tighten on these brake rotor, or these brake mount bolts, these brake caliper mounting bolts. I'm sorry I don't have like good light down there, but I'm trying to narrate it for you. All right. So then I'm gonna torque down these mounting bolts good. And then I think I can just back off that adjustment that I made on the inside a little bit, and then it won't be scraping. So let's tighten this on all the way. And these bolts for the brake calipers, I think a lot of times, like, those are at least blue thread lockered, or it's a little bit better. I think I might have bent up the brake disc a little bit when I was messing around with the wheel, and now it's just kind of like gently scraping, but you could probably ride and that would go away. Or I plan on upgrading this brake rotor to a 205 or a 203 millimeter anyways, so I'm not even going to use this brake rotor. But so we have adjusted the wheels. We've overhauled the cup and cone, like the loose ball bearings in each of the hubs for the wheels. So it's kind of like the first step. That's an important thing, is your wheels and the hubs on your wheels. Because if the hubs get all worn out and those races that the bearings go around in your wheels, then you're gonna have to buy like whole new wheels, and that's kind of like the main thing that is gonna wear out on these bikes if it's not greased and it's not adjusted properly. And it's one of those things where there's like you could be too tight or it can be too loose. Like it has to be like just right, and it's something that like has to be done with care. And the person that assembled the bike probably might not have, you know. So all right, so the next step I think is I might take a look at, so let's take a look at like the bottom bracket and pull the cranks off and stuff, because one thing that I've had happen with these bikes in the past, I think it was actually my Schwinn Axum, is like I had a crank arm that was like the crank arm, like the threads on it where you thread in the crank puller. I don't know what happened, but like my crank puller like broke or something. Like it went in there all cockamamie and like it broke, and it wasn't cross-threaded. Like there was just something funny about the cheap cranks that were on the bike. And then I don't know if like the inside of it wasn't like machined exactly like symmetrical, or I don't know, but like my Bark Tool crank puller has never failed me except for on that one bike. And like I threaded it into the crank and then like it broke my crank puller. And then I noticed on the inside, like the threads where you thread in the crank puller, like they got like stripped out or something. So I think they were just like janky, cheap cranks or something on one of the other bikes that I got. But yeah, like, so you wanna like take these things apart and take them off your bike, like after you buy the bike, within the return period. Because like if you have a crank arm that's stripped, like the threads are all stripped out, or like something is wrong with it, you just want it, like that is one of those things where like it could take a whole day, or like it's just like a huge chore, like something like that, where something is just stripped out. And it's like, well, how do you pull the crank arm off of there if you can't even like use a crank puller? The tool that we're gonna need for this is the crank puller, right? And oh wow, so there's like some kind of funny crank, like what is going on here? This is like there's like a what kind of crankset is this? There's like a nut inside of here. What is going on here? That's so weird. I've never seen that in my life. Like, do you even use a crank puller on this? That's so weird. What is that? All right, guys. So I just used ChatGPT and I asked it what is going on with this. And then so I think it's like a 14 mil Like, look at this thing. I've never even seen... Where's my little light? I need a light so I can show you, Bubs, what's going on here. Let's see here. So look at this thing. Look at that nut in there. Isn't that weird? So, like, this is the stuff that you can run into with Walmart bikes. Is there's just, like, these mysterious parts on them that barely make sense. But... I've never seen this, but I don't know, I think this socket fits on there. And I think, do we just loosen this lefty-loosey on here? So, yeah, so we can just hold on to that other side. And then I guess we're gonna loosen this side, or can we just hold this side and then, yeah, just hold this side and we loosen here? Let's see here. Oh, I could probably use some leverage. Oh man. All right, so I'm holding the crank onto the chainstay with my left hand and then loosening with my right. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, guys. So these cranks, like, I think on these bikes the cranks are just like this like funny soft metal like garbage stuff. And so sometimes the cranks that come on these bikes, like, you just put so much force into like pulling cranks on and off and stuff. Like, it seems like it might be a little bit goofy in here, but we should be able to deal with it. I don't know. I mean, it just looks a little bit funny in there. Like, I've never seen, like, I think there's supposed to be a crank bolt right there, but it was like a huge nut that was on there instead. That's so wacky. Like, why would you use this instead of a crank bolt? And look how tight that thing was on there. Oh my god. Like, look at how much metal got ground off by this thing. That's crazy. This thing is a wacky crank, dudes. So, I mean, this is like, it'll work, but like, you want to make sure it's not like seized on here. So now we can use a crank puller. So I've got this thing like this. I've screwed this thing so that it's like lining up here, right? And then I'm gonna thread the crank puller in to the crank arm. And now we can finally pull this bulb off of here. Ooh, wow. This is a weird deal. This is kind of a weird crank. I don't even know. Oh. I wonder if we're gonna have the same problem with this bike that I had with the previous bikes. So let's see here. We're gonna grease in here. This is like, it seems like the threads inside of this crank arm are like kind of messed up, and I might have the same problem here as I had with the previous one. So like, we need to be very careful here. And I need to like get this crank puller threading in there gently and make sure that it's not cross threaded. Like, this is kind of going to be like a precision. This is kind of tricky. This is the kind of problems that you might run into. And this is why bike shops don't want to deal with this stuff. It's like, if you get this kind of stuff happening where it can just take a whole day to fix. So let's hope that I can thread my crank puller on here. Well, please say a prayer for me, because the last time that this happened, it was not easy to rectify. Okay, so those, man, so I have, yeah, so this is definitely got the same problem that I had with a previous bike, for sure. That's scary, man. Okay, so it didn't seem like the crank puller threaded in there as much as I would like. Let's see here. So let's see. Is this gonna go in there anymore? Like, is this... It was kind of like a tight spot right there or something. Weird. Yeah, so this is an example of what happens with Walmart bikes, and you gotta be very careful and know what you're doing, kind of, and a bike shop might not want to deal with this. So I'm just gonna keep tightening this in here. Hopefully Like, you don't want to torque it down like crazy, because like if this thing bottoms out and then I twist this too hard, it'll just strip all the threads off. Like, really, you want to do it by finger if you can until it bottoms out in there, and then start twisting. So I think I got it in there, and then start twisting this guy on the inside, and then it helps to take the chain off of here. It'll be easier to pull it with the chain off. And I think I might just like break the chain off. Do we have a quick link on this thing? Let's see. Back to this this kind of like questionable situation with the crank puller here. So let's make sure. Okay, so we're gonna, okay, so it seems like this is, okay, so this is the part where we gotta start crossing our fingers that this crank is gonna actually pull off of here when I wrench on this. We gotta say a little one right now, guys. We gotta get down on our knees and say a little one here. Ask the big guy upstairs for thread protection and good fortunes on this crank pulling. All right, here we go. So we're gonna pull this crank off, and please don't strip the threads out of here. Just please pull the crank. I think it's pulling. So we can kind of look in here and okay, is it pulling off? I think it's pulling. Is it pulling off? Woo! Okay. So, wow. Okay. So let me get this crank puller off of here. Man, that was scary. Like, look at inside of there. It just doesn't look. I'm scared to even put this crank back on there, because it was, the threads on that thing were so questionable. Man, that is scary. I might have to get like a different, I might have to get like a whole different crank set. Like, I don't know how good this bottom bracket is going to be, really. Like, when I get these bikes, I will try and use what's on it, but if you get something like this that's stripped out, like, this thing can get stuck on here. If these threads in here get stripped out and you can't use this tool to pull this thing off of there, this thing can be quite hard to get off of here. Like, even if you try prying it with like a pry bar, like, so I'm scared to use this crank again, just from how it looks in here, because I don't want it to get stripped out and get stuck on there. Let's see here. It was a little bit scary. I'm gonna thread this thing in here, and like, it just gets so tight right there. Like, there's something messed up with these threads on this crank. I don't think you should have to use a wrench like this to like get the threads, like get your crank puller threading into a crank. Like, there's just like tight spots on here. Like, how does that even happen? Like, what? I don't know if these cranks are just bunk. Like, because you don't use these threads when you're tight. Like, the people who assembled the bike, like, these threads shouldn't even be used during assembly. Like, it's just for pulling the cranks off. So I don't know like how those threads would have got so messed up. But you shouldn't have to use a wrench to do this. Like, you should just be able to do it by finger. Yeah, it just feels crunchy. Oh God, I think I need, yeah. I think, so guys, this is something where like, if something doesn't seem right, like the threads on this thing, then I would just throw it in the garbage. Like, that's probably what I'm going to do with this, because it's not, I'm scared to even use this, really. It doesn't seem like my crank puller is like threading in there all the way like it should. So it's just like, I'm just going to keep forcing it in there and see what happens. It doesn't seem like it was even going all the way in there. Huh. Weird. That is so weird. That's such a weird situation. And alright guys, so like I actually just like, I just kind of dinked around with this for a second. And it seems like, at first I thought that the threads in here inside of the crank arm were stripped out. And the first time that I threaded this crank puller in there, like it felt like really tight and really rough. And then I actually like used a crescent wrench. Like I only got it like a certain amount, and then it got rough, and I had to use an adjustable wrench here to get this crank puller like all the way on like it should be. But then, oops, no, this part's falling apart. I gotta throw this back out of here. But then once I did that with the wrench and I kind of like forced it through there, I think I actually tapped the threads in the crank with the crank puller. So like I think that the threads inside of the crank were like not right or something, is what it seemed like. So let's put my crank puller back together here. Because the first time I put this crank puller in there, it was like super rough. And then like I put some grease, I put some grease in there and I backed it out. I did kind of have to wrench it in there a second time, but then now it seems a lot more normal. So I think it was the threads. I think it was the threads inside of the crank arm weren't tapped all the way. It's super weird. But yeah, it seems okay now. I don't know. Kind of like crisis averted. That's super weird. But on my other bike, it was a Schwinn Axum. I had something happen like that, and the crank arm got seized onto the bike, and I should have just brought that bike back to the store and returned it. Alright, so I actually think I will be able to use that crank arm. So now I'm going to loosen, I think this is one. That's weird. I'm still just like discombobulated about this nut that goes on there like that. I've never seen that before, man, and I wouldn't have expected that on like a... Is that normal? I wouldn't have expected that on a bike that's like $600 at Walmart. I would have expected like a normal crank bolt. Okay, so we got this goofy bolt out of there that... Okay, so I just spun the bike around here, and then I'm looking in here at these threads on this crank arm, and these ones seem fine. So I don't know what happened on the other side, but I'm gonna put a little bit of grease in here just so that it's gonna thread in there nice and smoothly. Weird. We kind of gotta like tap some new threads with the crank puller here. What's going on? What the heck? This is such a weird deal. Like I can't even get the crank puller to thread on there. So I'm kind of having to do the same thing over on this crank arm. Like you don't want to use like a ton of leverage and force if you're using a wrench to twist this thing, but it's definitely like something that's a little bit funny, man. Like it's like I'm tapping threads. I'm tapping threads with the crank puller, but it seemed to work on that last one, so I don't know. Let's keep going here. I'm gonna twist that around a little bit. So yeah, we're tapping some threads, boys. I don't know if they're like, hopefully it's not cross threading, but you just want to thread the crank puller in there until it's like, until it's bottomed out and it's on as many threads as you can get it on. I'm just doing this lightly. Like it should really be turning by hand. It kind of is now. Well, there we go. Yeah, it seems like it bottomed out there. All right, so now get this thing pulling, hopefully. That crank wasn't on there very good, actually. Like, it was on there okay, but it's not on there as much as I usually put them on there. All right, interesting. So, oh, the crank is even threading more now. Huh. Weird. Let's take this off of here and see what's going on. Yeah, it seems like it was just kind of like tapping the threads a little bit. I don't know, super weird, but it's better than the threads being stripped out and the crank arms being stuck on there. So yeah, I would say if the threads on the crank arm are stripped out, like, you just probably want to bring it back to the store and return it. Like, that's not fun. One time I had a crank arm that was seized on my bike. Is this hot? One time I had a crank arm that was seized on my bike, and I had to like pry it off. It was crazy. Not recommended. It took like a whole day long to figure it out. And that's why bike shops don't want to deal with these things. All right, so now we're down to the bottom bracket. And every time you work on a bottom bracket, you gotta go on the internet and then try and remember how to do it. So I'm gonna do that now. So we've got the bike down here. We're just gonna bust open the bottom bracket and see what's going on in here. Oh. All right. So, I mean, basically, how you take apart the bottom bracket is you ask the AI what to do and remind you. So this is a threaded bottom bracket, is what you're probably going to find on a Walmart bike. And so on the drive side, so that's the opposite side from us. The drive side is where all the gears are, that side of the bike. So on the drive side, it's like a backwards thing. It's like reverse threading on the drive side, right? And so that design, you know, like if the drive side wasn't reverse thread, then like when you're pedaling, it could be loosening the bottom bracket, right? So that's kind of the funny part with bottom brackets, is the drive side is reverse thread, but we're not on the drive side over here. We're on the non-drive side. So it's just normal over here, and so you can see on the bottom bracket, it's got like these notches around the outside of that thing, right? That this guy, I think we use this tool is what, so what is this? This is the HCW 5 from Park Tool. So I think we take this guy and then just loosen off this lock ring on here. Oh, that was on there pretty good. Yeah, so it seems like this inner part is what adjusts the tension of the bearings. Like there's a piece that threads on this side into the bottom bracket. Like this part of the bike is the bottom bracket shell, and it's threaded on the inside. And then this piece right here threads on there, right? This big threaded thing, and then this is the thing that kind of like holds it. This is the thing that like fastens on there really tightly, right? But then you can also use this tool that I was just using with the, with the funny, this guy. You use this tool to like adjust the inner part of it, right? So it's kind of like an outer ring right here. And then we've got this inner part, and we're gonna have to get this on there to take this part out, right? Now I believe inside of these threads you want anti-seize, like inside of your bottom bracket threads, and I don't see anything on here. Doesn't seem like it. It seems like there's some grease on the inside, not very much. That's not very much grease at all on there. And then I don't see anything on the bottom bracket threads inside of there, so I'm gonna take these cage bearings and just have them so they go into here like this. So I'm just gonna kind of keep all this stuff together so I remember which way it goes back together. And then so over on the opposite side, the drive side, that's where we gotta use the tool and then do it the funny way. So over on the opposite side, it's like reverse thread, remember? Alright guys, so I've got my Park Tool, what is this? BBT22, and it's in my impact with like this little, what is this, like a 3/8 inch drive thing on here that goes into your impact. So I can't get this thing off like by hand. I think they must have like impacted it on there. And so it's supposed to thread off to the right, as far as I know. But like, I was putting a lot into it and it wasn't coming, so I'm going to the right because it's supposed to be righty-loosey on the drive side. Right, so I'm putting on number 2 on the impact. Oh. Putting it on number 3 on the impact. What is going on there? That was crazy, dude. What is that spec'd on there? 2. This is nuts. Jesus. Okay guys, I have bloodied my hands getting this drive side thing, the drive side bottom bracket thing off of here, and I think I just got it. Did it loosen up here? Oh my goodness, that was so, yes, I got it. Oh my goodness, that just took forever. Okay guys, so these are the kind of things that you have to deal with Walmart bikes. Is like, they must have drove this on there with an impact, just like some crazy impact. And my Milwaukee M18 fuel on the highest setting could not get that thing off of there. It was just like, it was just going crazy and I couldn't get it off of there. And so what I did was like, the problem with this is like this wrench is all like goofy down here. So like, I don't think this is what you want. But like, if I had a better wrench with this thing, it would have worked better. But so like, I had to hold it down here like really tight. Like I used my hand right here and held on, like holding this part up against the frame. And then I was holding down my bike stand against the floor, like with one foot, because I kept like lifting up the stand. I was like torquing the whole bike in the stand. And then I like lifted up my right leg over here and like put all of my weight down on my right leg. And I finally broke it free, and it sounded like something like cracked or something. It was crazy. Unbelievable. Like, I was like, and this is the confusing part about these bottom brackets, it's like reverse thread, but it's torqued on there so much, and it's like, oh my goodness, like, am I doing it right, or what's going on here? That was crazy, man. That was like borderline seized. Like, I was a little bit scared. I was a little bit scared, to be honest. Alright, so that was a mess. Let's see if I can still find all of the pieces to this thing. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to take some anti-seize. So this is Park Tool ASC1. And I got to knead this stuff for a minute because this stuff gets a little bit funny. Like when you leave it sitting in a storage bin for like a year. So I'm just going to kind of mix this stuff up a little bit in there. So I believe it's anti-seize is what you want in the bottom bracket here. Okay, so I'm just going to get a nice hearty helping of anti-seize going in here so I can my anti-seize is kind of like a weird situation here where it's kind of runny. Let's see here. Do we got some of the goopy stuff here? Okay. We've got some anti-seize over here for the bearings. And then we are going to put, I might put some anti-seize on these threads as well. And so then this side, the drive side, tightens on loosey-goosey, lefty tighten on the drive side, remember? So I would thread it in there by hand just to make sure it's going in there nicely like this. Okay. So we've got our anti-seize going in there. Alright, so now this time I don't think I'm gonna go crazy with the with the impact. Like, I'm gonna put it on like mode 2, and then have it going to the left. And then we're just gonna make sure that we tighten that on there nicely. There we go. That should be good. So then I'm just gonna check how tight does that go on there when I've got the impact on 2. Is that hard to get off with the breaker bar again? Oh no, that wasn't. I might torque it on there with like number 3. It was pretty easy to get that off. So I'm gonna torque that on there with 3 on my thing. It's lefty loosey over here, remember? Okay. And I might even give it a little bit of a twist to the left with this big breaker bar, just because it seems like that went on there pretty good, but it seems like I can tighten it on there even more with this breaker bar. So I'm gonna do that a little bit here, because you do want that going on there pretty good. Okay, that's good enough. I don't want to hurt myself again. Okay, I'm gonna come back down here and find my find this guy, which is now all full of like sand and dirt and shit. And we're just gonna wipe him off. So I'm probably gonna put like a different bottom bracket and like a different crank set and stuff on this eventually. So I got all that old grease off of these bearings. I'm just gonna wipe this axle off too. I'm not going like precision cleaning mode on this stuff. Right. So then it seems like we want this bearing guy. I'm gonna get some grease into this. So let's pump some grease in here to this. There's no grease in the bottom bracket bearings here. They're kind of weird. Like, they grease the wheel hubs. I wonder if maybe they build the wheels in China or something, and like the Chinese people were putting them together with grease, but then I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. You would think that they would build the, I don't know. That's weird how this wasn't greased. But yeah, we're gonna get the axle, and usually there's like a longer bit on the axle on the drive side, because it's got to kind of like offset the space for the, you know, like the chain ring. So I think this side goes in over here, and I'm gonna put these bearings like this, I believe, and then this spins right here like that. And so, yep, that seems like that should be right. And then we can get some grease on here. All right. So we're gonna get this spindle going back in here. Okay, and then over here on this side, I will apply some grease to the cone here. All right, so then we've got this guy right here that doesn't have any grease in it either. And we are just gonna give this thing all of the grease that it could ever possibly want and require. Okay, so then this, let's see here. This, I believe, will go right here, like so. And then I'm also gonna get some anti-seize over here, because I don't think that I did yet. So then this inner piece, like, it's gonna get to a point where it just like bottoms out and stops moving, right? This piece on the non-drive side, like, it's just gonna get to a part where it stops. But then if you tighten it up that far, like, the cranks won't be able to spin at all, right? So it's this we're not just like tightening this on as tight as we possibly can. This inner part adjusts like the compression on the bearings. So what we want to do here is it's just kind of like the wheels, you know, like where you tighten it to the point where it's tight, but then like you want to loosen it up a little bit just so that it can spin nice and freely and smoothly. Like okay, so let's loosen off a little bit more. Like you don't want it, and then pull on it and see like if this thing is too loose, then you can pull it. You see how you can pull it like laterally? So you don't want that. So we're gonna tighten it back up until it like doesn't pull like this at all. Okay. And so once you get it to that spot, like you kind of have to like hold it there. You can really just kind of like keep spinning the spindle and then just keep tightening it until it starts to feel like it's tightening to the point where it's like it's not allowing it to spin as freely. These cranks, like, those don't spin very good, man. It's kind of hard to spin that with my finger. I don't know, maybe that's just normal. Okay, so we're tightening this thing on and backing it off slightly, and it's hard to, it seems like I could probably tighten this on pretty good. Like, it doesn't seem to inhibit the it does seem like, just back it off slightly. There we go, probably. Okay. So then it looks like we gotta get this thing going back on here. This guy. And this is the part that we tighten on there super tight on this side to hold everything in place. A little bit tricky getting this guy threading on there, man. There. And this is kind of also one of those things where we need to use that tool. I'm not even sure if I'm doing this part right, to be honest. Like, pretty sure, but I don't know if like I'm using like this wrench. I don't know if this is like the correct wrench for this. This is a little bit wonky trying to fasten this thing on there, but all right, guys. So we overhauled the bottom bracket, so that's nice. We overhauled the hubs. And that's kind of like the main thing. Is like anything that has bearings that's like rotating on your bike, bottom bracket, hubs, and also like our headset we're gonna have to take a look at here. So we're just gonna keep going with that. And that's gonna be kind of the final step for this one, is we're just gonna loosen off the stem on our headset a little bit. And then I guess we could probably get our cranks back on here. I'll put them back on here because I did manage to get the threads kind of sorted out. I'll just have to like keep in mind that these are some funny cranks, but so yeah, make sure you got the left crank going on to this non-drive side, the left side of the bike, and then so I'll get my socket and this little goofy thing again here. And then tighten this on in a normal righty-tighty fashion. All right, so then we're just gonna get this drive side crank on, make sure it's kind of like alternating from the directions of the other crank so that they're not, you gotta have your cranks like on there properly, right? And then we're gonna get that goofy crank bolt. Where do I put that? Here it is. I'm gonna start threading that in over here. Usually it's a bolt and you'd use like an Allen wrench, like a man, was it like usually like a 6 or like an 8 or something? But for some reason right now we have this nut that we get to tighten on there. Alright guys, so the last thing we gotta do here is we gotta adjust the headset. I wanna make sure that there's grease, so there's like bearings that go right here. And sometimes they're like sealed cartridge bearings, and sometimes on these bikes they're probably not, right? So we gotta take the stem bolt, we gotta tape this stem, like this top cap thing. We gotta loosen this bolt and take off the top cap. And then we're gonna loosen the stem bolts and then probably lift the bars up off of the steer tube and take the spacers up, and then this thing will lift up and we'll be able to like drop the fork down a little bit and lift the frame up, and then we'll get some grease right here, and we'll get some grease right here, and we'll put it all back together. All right, so we're gonna loosen the top cap bolt right here. So we're loosening this guy out, and don't lose that. Here's how they installed the star nut. Looks all right. I always knock those in all goofy with a socket or something because I'm too cheap to buy the star nut tool, and then it gets all goofed up and I regret my life choices, and I should probably buy one of those. So here we got the 4, I think is what goes on these stem bolts. Yep. All right. So loosen these guys. Oh, there they were torqued on there pretty well. And these stem bolts, like you always want to check these on the Walmart bikes just to double check them. Like on up here, there's like 4 of them up here, and then there looks like there's 2 of them on the stem over here. So we're working our way in towards the headset bearings is what we want to fix. So now our stem is just all loosey-goosey, and we can take this and lift this up, and then the fork is kind of just dropping out, and you can see that there's all the bearings. See right here that we want to grease up. It does seem like, let's see here. It does seem like there's some grease in there. When I'm looking up in there, there's some grease up in the upper race. However, there's is this a metal shaving in there? Yes, there's a metal shaving in there. And I don't know, it kind of looks, what do we got on here? Looks like this, kind of gooby. I'm also just gonna grease these bearings right here. You can kind of like grease underneath them like this, right here, all the way around. All right, here we go. I'm just gonna put a bunch of grease on top of these bearings right here. Whole bunch of grease on these bubbies. There we go. All right, nice. And then same deal up here. We can just kind of lift these guys up off of here. And So we want to grease down in here. Okay. Alright guys, so we're just kind of putting the bars back on the bike here, and then you gotta lift the fork up from the bottom and kind of get this top cap thing going back in here like this. And then this is what we can use to get the compression of the fork and everything back in order here. So I'm going to grab my 2 stem bolts as well, and then I'm going to grab the 4mm in addition to the 5, and then I'm going to step over here. And I want to make sure that my bars are looking nice and straight in a moment when we do stem. But first, we're going to use the, this is the 5 on the top cap thing. So when you're adjusting the top cap bolt, like, you gotta use your hand and grab from the bottom of the fork. Usually grab like this from the bottom and then lift it up so that the fork is coming up all the way in that bottom race. And then this top cap thing will kind of like adjust the compression of everything. So once we keep tightening up the top cap thing, we should be able to, the fork should kind of be like up in here better, like staying up in here better. Shouldn't be all goofy up there. And then you can kind of get your bars straight, just looking down them from right above them. Get my bars straight with the wheel up there, or else it's going to feel wonky. Right, and so I kind of tighten that up all the way here, just lifting the fork from the bottom, tightening this all the way here, nice and snug, and then probably give a little bit more after that. Just, you don't want to tighten this thing too crazily, or it'll just pull the star nut up out of the steer tube, and that's always a nightmare. But it's the lifting up the fork from the bottom that is like the part that people miss. That's the part that I used to always get wrong. I used to always wonder why my, like, if your whole like headset feels loose, like you're steering right around here, if you hold the front brake and then you like lean on the bike, you can feel like right here, if this thing is moving, like I still need to tighten this up more because I can feel it moving around right here. So I'm lifting up from below the fork and then tightening even more here. So then I'm gonna, let's see if I can get this wheel straight here. So then I'm gonna be hitting the front brake again and then moving the bike back and forth. And so now I can't really feel like movement at this headset thing anymore. I'm gonna give it slightly more here. Lifting up from the bottom of the fork, tightening up this top cap bolt. Okay. So that should be good. All right. So I'm just going to get the bars straight again here, looking down at it. And let's see here. I'm going to do this to the left a little bit here. Top one, some more. Put this little guy back in here. Excellent, excellent. All right, let's get this bub back up in the stand. So yeah, guys, that's basically it. We've done the Walmart bike overhaul. We've given this thing the once over. that I would recommend you do before you turn a Walmart bike into an e-bike. Because you can just hop on these things and start pedaling around, and you can't really tell when those bottom brackets are tight or when the hub bearings are tight, the cup and cones. So make sure that you check this stuff, because the people that assembled these things at Walmart, they just kind of hack them together. And that's half of the reason why these things get such a bad reputation, is just because the people that are putting them together like aren't doing the best job. It does seem like on this bike, they did do a better job. Like there was grease in the wheels, at least. There was some grease in the headset as well. It was a little bit questionable up there. But there's no grease in the bottom bracket, and that thing was tight, and the rear hub was tight. So it's a good thing when you look this over. That's what I'd recommend you do if you get a Walmart bike and you're going to turn it into an e-bike. That's what I always do. You could also like grease the seat post. Like take the seat post out of the seat tube and kind of grease in there a little bit, because that can be creaky. And also, you might want to get like some fork boost lubricant fork boost, so this cleans and lubricates bike suspension. So this is kind of like, this is just the stuff that like they probably didn't, it seems like there was maybe something on there, but it wasn't very much. Like it wasn't very much at all. So we just put some of this on there, the fork boost on our stock Walmart forks, to give them a fighting chance when we take this thing ripping off a jump with an e-bike motor on it. So we just get some of this over on each stanchion here. Oops, getting that on the floor is where I got that one. And this stuff, you want to wipe it off of your fingers immediately, because there's something in this stuff that is not good for your fingers. So like, get it off immediately, or you're going to be regretting it. I don't know what it is. Wash your hands afterwards. All right, so that's basically it. And like I said, you might, like if you run into something like a seized crank, or like the crank is like the threads on it are stripped out or something, it's going to take you all day to fix it. Just return it back at Walmart and get your money back, and like order another one. I don't know. But yeah, guys, so that's the Walmart e-bike strategy and the overhaul. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time on the e-bike builder channel. Peace out.